station, Manx Radio. Radio Manx. Radio Manx. Badi on Saglion the Balakope.
Gilg Jew, Gilg J as Gilg Nerach.
Siodat Claare na Gael as Bavalia Musaltacha. I'm Robert Catin-Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Have you ever heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
And it's my pleasure to present this bilingual programme, Claare na Gael, with part of it in the English language as Les Perchi Sagilg, and with part of it in the Manx Gaelic, Chinyanamera, the mother tongue of Elin Vanning, the Isle of Man. As Mabanach the Trish. The Stanleys have often been mentioned in Claare na Gael in connection with Manx history, but they've not generally been the primary focus. However, the conclusion of William Gell's 1906 poem invites more attention to the family who were kings and lords of Man. On sgil na brerach and grim men mesich ashen putel, ta moira ben egg shen ngeden bes, as ta na nien goil kereil jen aek. Tan erek puserish, rish ben as de nienek, as de liet and lias voirs and de lias huur, genu charvent je ashenputtel. Gwendal Moel is from Morbihan in Brittany, but he's been based in the Colchester area for some time, and he's joined here by Emma Hardy on fiddle and her husband Tom on guitar to make up the trio Sauzon, the Saxon or English trio. Tawas Geesjach rish Radio Banning, Stasiwn and Ashun, Viscol er Scalia Mach by Doolish, Ellen Banning.
Hyrjoa kavrezi zel di tosti de glewe. Hyrjoa kavrezi zel di tosti de glewe. Alle stores barro la no la 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 am for you color Alle stores barro la 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 am for you color as I'm flying along as something gamble Number over the best la 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 that's what you make That's what you make it for the moral that it doesn't you know it's quite a big la 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 I'm the best I'm the best
A young Breton cleric, Guenole, meets a young woman, Metig, with the face of an angel, but she's bound for a convent. They swear eternal love and mourn that their fate is to separate forever, but they'll never forget each other. And we heard the voice of Gwendal Moel with the trio Sauzon. Whatever the rights and wrongs of the situation from the point of view of the people of the Isle of Man themselves, the Stanley family became de facto kings and later lords of Man, after Henry IV appointed Sir John Stanley to the kingship for his own lifetime, and then from 1406 it was made an hereditary title. However, there was a hiatus between 1593 and 1609, so William Gell's poem Man in Vegveen, a poetical sketch of the Isle of Man, isn't quite right in referring to Derby of renown, who thence for full 3 centuries down held undisputed Manin's crown. In the first place, they weren't the Derbys for the 80 years from 1405 to 1485. It was only in the latter year that they were created Earls of Derby. Then there was that hiatus, when Queen Elizabeth's Privy Council judged that King Henry IV's appointment of Sir John Stanley in 1405 and 1406 had been in error, and that all along the Crown of England had actually been King or Lord of Man. De ashen puttel gavrige wij morgen ze worden der aanmacht sonnie, ze chamber early. Genel jabi ek, as die kadle een chollig, maasten as meregen doe. A shen bunnen enemek ashen kolchoneltrish lai, as puttel, vogel ons blas hesjach germanisch, son ben egg vroch. A shen ode valley de kinjach solach vain lai as des meregen. Ons versioen en elje Jane Skiel show, she kaljen na lai-ish. Tret a quirre currit loch tai de golgus gins a chasjul, de vod macari rye ven sailus a cheer, maar ben fusi, tan jas voor grey de be kiddeg ashenfootel gol, me vissi coolina over dolly ons treg jaar. Wel, te chitli, les koenen oshigan, de bege me geert aie mere. Acht na jai shen, fos genel kiddeg gol. Ach les koene der galmijn eg aie mere, ta eidach stome corrigi, as die golgus en jins, gin en or hier eg loch tai heen, as ten prins downse inrichen merryish. Sophia Dale was a wonderful singer, and this is a song she wrote, and this version includes a Manx translation by Paul Rogers.
His way by night. The only road between us is the path of your light. The only way to see him is to give my eyes to you. Oh moon, go to him and see him like I do. Ist gauhuke din ashlishen gahi Gaan elwege de shingen ach strunen ergud fi de darren de korem oden kjolerish me grai o est mi huke es gauer and he wakes alone. The only road between us is an old road of stone. The only way to hold him is to give my heart to you. Oh moon, go to him and hold him like I do. East gauge, tread the father vorm, gaan elrebe de shingen, achen ferge gjalt arom, kost just juur morta, vede sjålerøy, o eist i mi hugge, as lide truden me. Moon go to him before the night is gone. The only road between us is the road that brings him home. The only way to be with him is to rise and to see. Oh, moon, go to him and bring him home to me.
The voice of Sophia Dale and her own song, East. Der hiert Elje van Prins Downse merish Ashenpootel. Der hiert te gol Mary gus de tai. Ach, te brisher sulvai. A traas geert renne rege son pik de wij sleid herish na Griechen, as van breg ek got jon shen. Haie prins gus de tai a leir gain lesje vreg, as te breich machjon na nienen se tai, de wel is on poesa quaer bijou giish van breg fregertach. Rennel jas woer korlige den gidde nienek, de jare wooi en ordeg gosjeg, de woddy kor mooie vreg. Ach, dan jienli ai moir Ashenpootel, tarn Gael makkeried en fool, as na wel shaw en ven eg kaart. Tan jas woer korlige den na nienek, de jare wooi glout van voenek, de woddy kor mooie vreg. Rish, tan jienli ai moir Ashenpootel, tarn Gael makkeried en fool, as na wel shaw ven kaart noder. Eggetai te feather macht de wel Ashenpootel on, ach dan jas woer grei de wel I rov roch de wij corrit keon vanish. Queen Elizabeth may have deferred to the Stanleys because of their service to the crown over many years, but she, said her Privy Council, was de jure Lord of Man, and on her death in 1603 she was followed by King James. He in fact appointed 2 regents, as it were, before Anne Stanley, the daughter of Ferdinando Stanley, came of age. At that point, William Stanley, the brother of Ferdinando, who'd become the 6th Earl of Derby, bought out Anne Stanley's rights from her, and so he became Lord of Man. King James VI of Scotland, the first of England and Ireland, re-established the Stanleys to the lordship of man through legislation in 1609, and that set the title in legislation as Lord of Man. However, whilst it's something that came up before in looking at the Castle Russian clock, that's jumping ahead again in this review of the Stanley family history. From the first Stanley King of Man in 1405, Sir John Stanley, the second one was another Sir John Stanley in 1414. After him, in 1432, came Thomas, who was made the Baron Stanley. Music from Cornwall, with Andy Law leading the way on his fiddle. Andy's from Newlyn, and he was joined by musical friends from the Newlyn Penzance area. More from Andy and friends later.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Sienne the Jaru, Stasiwn and Asiwn, Radio Banning. Sé Claare na Gael and Claare Shaw, with Skull Chebbel, Joram Peen, Robert Catteen Carswell, Robert a Charslach.
Did the ever hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Joris Gulgus in the Degger Radio Banning as Raya Chraman Eish Rish, for the Ufedden recorders Jay de Claare na Gael, Rishacht and Lugji Guller Scalia Mach. The podcast Genius, Rish Regadan Nasty through the Nedegger Radio Banning, the through the Reich the Podcast Ed, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. Confusingly, it was during Thomas Stanley's time as King of Man that Shakespeare has Sir John Stanley as a character, taking Eleanor Cobham, who'd been stripped of her title as Duchess of Gloucester and obliged to divorce her husband, Duke Humphrey. She was taken as a prisoner in charge of Sir John Stanley, and he says that she be taken to the Isle of Man. Well, legend has it that she was imprisoned in Peel Castle, escaped, and was driven mad with terror until she thought she found security in a cave at Garwick. But then she was rearrested and said to have been locked up in Peel Castle for another 10 years, and that what's called the More the Thou was her restless spirit. As I say, that's the legendary part, and historic reality bears it out not a whittle or a jot. Eleanor Cobham may have been put in the care of the Stanleys, and Thomas Stanley, the first Baron Stanley, had a son called Sir John Stanley, so perhaps there's some little grain of truth there. Dinna wish the foglen a lias war, sé agnia veg macari de bech ashen pootle corrit lesh, as mersov a fémer ashen pootle chit kion fénish a frins. Hoicht renni oenlige an edin as na lauwenek, de rauwed glen de bollach, as haistiach on as renni corchi den frins, ren shina maagji a vreg era. Esh hai she ser stol, Chiarni a cas mach as a vreg chrom foiek, as renni skirra istiachs a vreg era, wa fregertach gi the slen. As tre chiasi sus, as yich a prins stiachs in Edinhek, va en ega rish a voigen elen vergauns amerish, as de me shacha ven fusi chart. But tan venus erskin ninchegen lias voires en de huur, as henkert de ve ben les corrie. Ach renne prins Corrie Rochen a chabel, as renne markiach Roche. As chouds wat gulsha tamach chaul, Gilly and der chalmen ben, Shach a prins as ben egg, as ginfool a breg, len chat and vreg shen, as shen nish a ben. It's a bit early for this, but this is Irish singer Eva Scott, with a song written by her and her songwriting partner Enda Riley, and it's called Slán Leat.
Slán Leat, Slán Walia, Ra Ra Run Moher, Song of Fall, Slán Walia, is me curse the tale. Slán Leat, Slán Walia, he shut the lad and scared. Song of Fall, Slán Walia, come with me. Go back to Salas Martina, go glash to Kusha Tanta, come out to now, cause Karau take the here in the fata. Slán Leat, Slán Walia, Ra Ra Run Moher, Song of Fall, Slán Walia, come with me. Go back to Red na Hiha, go glash to Hyo, Ninte, get day to on K. To slans the wall the sucker. Slán Leat, Slán Walia, Ra Ra Run Moher, Song of Fall, Slán Walia, come with me. deceiving gaan dit doen da amor. Go back to one mind amor. Hij da harva go. Slan lat, slan walia. Ra and mower. Slan fall, slan walia. Come the day on green die, naar heide dag de herkwie. Canary to balla neer glas lamas gagatu lavini. Alla dassen pui, slan nat, slan walia. Ra and mower, song of foe, slan walia. Is me cursed Sana, sana walia. Hey, shut and ski. Song of foe, sana walia. Come with me. Nor a hugging, nor a canoe. This fear could jockey now. Go round the fuckler shelf for sich jou. It's so funny och det och jou. Slan lat, slan walia. Ra mower. Slang of foe, slan walia. You see, curse the tail. Slan lat, slan walia. Hey, shut song before sun walia kumuli song before sun walia kumuli.
Eva Scott, daughter of Francis Black from the well-known family of singers, including Eva's aunt Mary Black. As treven der Almen en nillig maag zijn, Henker des utsen getlacht en jai, as henker de wijn en shadow gielt en ashenpoetel, fairjou het sjouw jesh, fairjou het sjouw gjer, as morsen rennet tanachten. As treven vanish pointed de way jint, henk de sjurigen false, as wat treestjeel de vrinnerach, as de gedden voor, as de royal aren onsen jelius. Maar zo houds van kosjach bandje, golgus en giel, ren en verschinne, schul het sjouw jesh, as a verse het sjouw gjer. As ren de kalmenen plugge maag soel je kaag. As houds wat chitterash, van verschinne het sjouw gjer, as a verse het sjouw jesh. As ren de kalmenen plugge maag, as soel elje je kaag. As maar zo wat deret de rol dols aan conjure maar na leenok, koente een olkes as een olsidok. As jen jerre skiel mechion ashenpoetel, versjuni morva my grey, jen skiel mechion callion the lie. Despite what Shakespeare may say, Eleanor Cobham, the former Duchess of Gloucester, was taken and imprisoned in Chester Castle in 1442, which would certainly be in the Stanley's orbit. Thomas Stanley was Constable and Justice of Chester. In the following year, 1443, Eleanor was moved to Kenilworth Castle, which was strongly associated with the Lancastrians, including John of Gaunt, one of the sons of Edward III. But Eleanor was to be on the move again in 1446, when she did arrive in the Isle of Man and was held in Peel Castle. And that's most certainly under the aegis of the Stanleys. However, she was on the move again 3 years later, when in 1449 she was moved to Beaumaris Castle in Ynysmond, the Isle of Anglesey. But again, amongst Thomas Stanley's officers, he was Chamberlain of North Wales. Shakespeare may have used the name of Sir John Stanley just as a kind of shorthand, as there'd been the two John Stanley Kings of Man from 1405 to 1432. The name of the Welsh village Machtraeth means an unwholesome beach. There's a raised causeway there, Cob Machtraeth, which carries the road. The singer here worries if it'll break. Beth Kellen sings with the trio Vree.
Os torrydd cob malltyraidd fe foddydd fy mam Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Tirai oli oli ai Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Mae fi gaif y cam Ond fedrai ddim clytio na golchif hen gris Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Tirai oli oli ai Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Byddai farw ar frys Os torrydd cob malltyraidd fe foddydd fy mam Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Tirai oli oli ai Mae'r nafon yn fy nghalon Mae fi gaif y cam
Cob Mach Traeth, which was ordered to be built first around 1790, and is the subject of that song that was sung there by Beth Kellyn, joining the trio Vree. On the death of Thomas Stanley, the first Baron Stanley, in 1460, came another Thomas, the man whose first wife was the daughter of the Earl of Warwick, the Kingmaker, and on her death he'd married Lady Margaret Beaufort, and became stepfather-in-law to Henry VII. This was the Thomas Stanley who was created the first Earl of Derby for supporting Henry VII in defeating Richard III at Bosworth Field in 1485. It was this Thomas Stanley, the first Earl of Derby, who developed Latham House into a stronghold known as the Palace of the North, with thick walls commanded by 18 towers and the great Eagle Tower in the centre. It was at Latham that Thomas Stanley died in 1504. His eldest son, George Stanley, had died the year before at Derby House in London in December of 1503. The rumour was that he'd been poisoned at a banquet. However, George had a son, another Thomas Stanley, who inherited his grandfather's title as second Earl of Derby. For the Welsh in Llei Red through the Lior George, a Sgil and Ferish na Brerich and Grim, as the naskiel enmesich a luch, an ushig as a pronag. Gen a wel is gan sjoilig or trein a wel meach ljai macht na skielen sa Claare Shaw, ach sa jor Shaw sa verl, wel Lucy Grange in a wimmet Jane Chomma Oxford. Ridelian na wadu fagen shen the Jolwyn yindes action teg a vrerek Walter Crane. And she be Shaw tyacht and skiel. Keert de rauw, wel luch as ushig as pronag, bech a koojach as frail tie, und she glen the mast oxen heen, as ons palches. She over an ushag de etlach as a Gael dach lei, as the chorley back foy. Ve an luch, tarn an usja, chin werlu an isle, as cor cooge a woord, as we currum a fronag de chogera. Han el pecher bee boeiach sa tail shaw, ta moeren giri tulju. Led a rauw henk an ushag quail ushag elia a red, as dinsje gee machjaun a stead fee by ar bashel sa blioazek. The trio Low, with Chris Drever from Orkney on guitar, the fiddle of Aidan O'Rourke from Oban, though an Irish father, and on accordion Martin Green, originally from Sheffield.
Station, Manx Radio.
Stasiwn yn asiwn dy radio fanim, as yn sio, sé Claare na Gael vis verglaasjen Carnish, Meryn Peen, Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Have you heard tell of our Bobby Bob?
A huggen us je gelje, toet bacherie, der au chwish oberek. Gouds van der jou elje, kou bij a geis de tai. Trevan luch an you know erlu an Eilek as a charn usje, hai de goil face a chamber begek, der a harach and try de chor enrit der a woord. Ren na pronag tanachten jorish na panachen, jean de you know shiger, de rauwe bee cogrich de mai. As kjart rosh treje ne, renne meste a broch, nun vrouwish, tri na care kierten de mai me giertemush, de you know me as blastel na vaan. Esh, jinnach an ushig chit de valia, as corshis a ledek, as jinnach had sai shis de ag a woord, as luglun je mai jinnach had gold a lie, as cardlin inside der a vorra gain. She bay fi vibe on de jarrow. Ach ren an ushig reche an aigni ec a le gain, nach jinnach I corli foi arach, as ish grey draui mor sleib dau fodder de lure, as nish de beiden dau koch le me girt, as jinnu reches no. Thomas, the second Earl of Derby, made a brief visit to the island in 1507. It said that it was he who gave the name of Derby Haven to the sheltered cove to the east of Castletown, sheltered by the northern tip of Lang Ness and St. Michael's Isle, although the earliest recording of the name seems to be from the 1660s. The Stanleys were an important family at the royal court, and it was this Thomas Stanley, the second Earl of Derby, who took avoiding action, as it were, to make sure, well, that his head stayed on his shoulders, because he was at the court of King Henry VIII, Henry who came to the throne in 1509 and was king until his death in 1547. Thomas Stanley, the second Earl, took the view that, rather than appearing at the court of King Henry VIII as King of Man, it would be more politic to be the Lord of Man amongst all the other lords at court. Thomas, the second Earl of Derby, died in 1521, and he was succeeded by Edward Stanley. But Edward Stanley was a minor, and Henry VIII took responsibility for him. Alato is a Breton exclamation for something like, "What an idea!" And it's the name of this duo from the Crozon Peninsula, Antoun Cabon and Rewel Ilien. Anton sings in Breton here.
Darfanar, nuske med der gear, is blond sur, nare dukuna, I plasan tour, klasker ves, en am gustumim, de betraster vishet, spliketim, Shilars de ar, en museum, de kumbren da pele, ja osku.
Breton duo Alato and a song called Glass. At the time of Thomas Stanley's death in 1521, his son Edward was about 13 years of age, and Henry VIII appointed commissioners to bring him up until he was of age. The chief commissioner to guide Edward Stanley, the third Earl of Derby, was Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, and Edward Stanley later went with him on some diplomatic missions. However, when Henry VIII fell out with Wolsey, Wolsey had been in North Yorkshire, and as he returned he fell ill with dysentery and died in November 1530. Edward Stanley was 20 by this time, so just a year to go to come of age. The wardship of Edward Stanley for that year was bought up by Thomas Howard, the Duke of Norfolk, and he married Edward off to his daughter, Catherine Howard, without the king's permission. Henry wasn't impressed, but he did allow the marriage. But then a few weeks later, Norfolk's daughter Catherine died of the plague. Whereupon the Duke arranged another marriage for Edward Stanley, this time with his half-sister Dorothy Howard. Marceau dyn y wyste veg dod y lwch as a pronag grey, ban usio cert de ynu rer yn aigniag hyn. Marceau ren y tarn cronen de reiche chwys. As henke mach, de rawe a fronag corlesh foich, van lwch de chogre, as van usiog de charn usje. Dych nes scher na hager. Hai a pronna gersul de gedden foich. Ren an usiog erlu yn ail, as hai a lucht de chor a panne nach. As ren at furchten yn tre jinnach a pronnag chit de valia, as corlesje fois an a leir gain. Ach van pronnag a serach houd, de rauwet smunje de rauwrid an ach jit as hai a usiog pert jen red de ien doddy fagen veg Harawi fóda sul, henki quail móda red, as veshen, jyn a fronag mo crach leoil, rogel nisa as a nyunu jerajay. Esh ren a nusiog corsiach plaint naien voda, ma rooster bachtel ginnera. Ach, harawi a chuns fordale. Let's enjoy the voice of Sophia Dale again, and with the band Skeel, she sings one of my songs this time, She Nineg Mishas Ellen.
Shenin ik misje zeilen kan hele skielen maar, zo nachtvoes misje dunje nach jakmige se hai, va vogelen ege miele van achter sege kjum, ach tene frug ak aglach is tammy ans prezoen, is ach men in en ude, shakken jisjen dunje. Dre henke haje kan ik me en snachte werk jan. Ach din she dauder als a chalach heil mar emma hon. But kid neget a drill in drie te scale a rush me smell. The chalach fu a rege to beg is bok en Gael. As auch men in en nulje, shakken jish en dunje. Deg me me churge nulje en tre henk me de show. Ach din she dauder our Harlem den de riedel jord. Da krugen en kachuligen is krugen sa tai. Da jergen en sa labi en tratami go de lai. As ach men in en ulje, shakken jish en dunje. Liam be von Kuljot, da gillish du me voorracht en arms ever red. Da geel more now to lekkes, drillion until you're a station for the foreignish to lost the leis be more. I zag men in en ulje, shakken jish en dunje. Na wel me lekken naad, like we pushfish dunje fes. As Tommy Jelverish a tread gin again beds. Ta rud en jafta kishe, they come along the tie. The volgens gaan me leggen, de stand te schier skrai. As och men in en ulje, shakken jish en dunje.
Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. That's the moral of that story. Shane Yeen Egg Mishas Ellen, sung there by Sophia Dale and the band Skeel. Door de morde, de rawi ang edden skriwen een false egg a fronag, de rawi tolchen call of Jois. Esh, fi trimshach, ren de nusha goil nis a foy, as dimmerke schine de balia, as dinshe den loch olju weer nagen as a glaasden. Wat ne nis burrich de moer. A keret de chire en red share as forced de hannacht en kujach. William Gell's poem drew attention to the glacis, which he rhymed as glacis, thought to have been built in the 1540s to protect Castle Rushen's walls from siege guns being brought up to it. One suggestion is that the glacis was ordered by Cardinal Wolsey, but as he died in 1530, it looks as though it was at Edward Stanley's prompting as 3rd Earl of Derby, although he never actually visited the island. Ach, rosh me vis cared on fedden maag tully mechan on lochtai Stanlach, signed on furachten derre nageert. Two hours of the best chill-out music for your Sunday evening on its way from 7 to 9, and then at 9 it's sundown to ease you into Monday morning. More music now from Andy Law and friends, and although Andy's from Newlyn, he's happy to take tunes from all around Cornwall. Kennesh as Marsaw. Until the next time then, this is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach,
Owl Bobby Bob.
wishing you a very good night. Eve I'm a Chriort, as Duts my Yerian share.